through this process, and she'll go through a presentation momentarily. If you have any other questions during this time, we have Attorney Mullen, myself, and the Assistant City Manager are here, so just feel free if you need anything. There are drinks and snacks in the back, pens, paperwork, all the stuff that you need. Just feel free to come and find me if you need anything. So with that being said, Karen McDonald will begin just in a second. One final announcement I forgot to mention. If you do need translation services, we have Jesus Villaseñor here, and he'll be situated in the back. So if you do need any translation services, he can provide those for you. So feel free to go back there if you need anything. Thanks.
So if somebody needs translation service, do you want to just translate it? Okay, good. Okay. All right, so thank you very much for coming this morning and for spending part of your Saturday with us. We're really happy that so many people are coming out today. What we're going to do is we're going to start with a little presentation just to walk you through what's going to happen here today and also over the next couple of months with respect to this process. And I'll basically just tell you a little bit about the criteria and how we're going to draw lines, just the general how you can give input and how you can participate. And the reason for that is I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page on how this process is going to transpire and go on the way. Again, if anybody needs translation services, please speak up if you'd like to translate that.
Muy buenas tardes a cualquier persona que necesite servicio de traducción al español. Estoy para servirles en la mesa de atrás. Gracias.
And we're going to have translation services at all of the meetings available also. So, okay, districting in Oceanside, how it works and how to participate. Let's go through this PowerPoint. By the end of this complete process, you will all know this PowerPoint very well. I can promise you. Okay. So let's go really quickly. What is districting? In a district-based electoral system, representatives are elected from districts. Currently, what you have is an at-large system, right? Where you get one ballot and everybody who runs for the council right now is on that one ballot. So it doesn't matter where the council members live. Districting is the process of drawing the boundaries that divide the city's population into the 4 districts. And, you know, once you have districts, you've heard of redistricting. That basically happens once you already have districts, and then every 10 years after the census is collected, all those districts get readjusted also based on population and various criteria. So the city has implemented a transparent public process to draw those districts. By that, we mean there's no smoky back rooms. We're doing everything in public. Everything is transparent. Please just ask questions. You're all invited to participate at every stage of this process, and we're really happy that so many people came out one more time because we all need you to participate. If passed by the City Council, so at this point the City Council of course hasn't seen the districts, right? They haven't seen what we're all going to come up with. So if they end up voting for those districts, they're going to go in effect with the November 2018 election. Next, please. So how is this process going to work? What are we going to do? We are going to hold community meetings. Thank you for coming to the first one. Please tell a neighbor about it. We will have more, especially next week. We're going to have 2 more. We have 2 public meetings, one on May 13, that's today, and one on May 16 to gather initial public input. So what we would like you to tell us is some of the things I'm going to ask you about. Slides in the next few slides. So we want to get an initial idea of what's going on here. What should these districts maybe look like? Where are your communities located? What is your sense about if we were to go to district elections, what should these districts look like? Because right now we have a blank slate, right? And there is 2 maps right here on the side, and there will be an opportunity to gather around those maps and really start looking at the geography and the people that live here in a little bit. On May 17, we have a City Council hearing, and we're going to present to the City Council whatever input we are gathering today and then also on Tuesday. So, you know, whatever you are telling us, the, you know, community boundaries, things like that, we're going to present those to the City Council. And that's also an opportunity to come out and give more input. General, specific, whatever you'd like to say, please come out and join us there also. Then we have 3 more public meetings on May 20, 23rd, and 30 to gather more input, get some feedback, and that's where we're going to start trying to put a map together. So it's actually a lot of fun if you've never done it, and I know it might sound a little weird that I say it's fun, but it actually is fun. And people really start to, get into it. We've done this a few times, and usually it's really interesting how people start working together and kind of try figuring out all of these difficulties of actually getting all these criteria right and really drawing districts that will work for people in this city. So I think you'll really enjoy it. So trust me. So after those 3 public meetings, we will put a draft map out, and that's going to be out probably within a couple of weeks after the last meeting, so around June 14 at the very latest, probably earlier actually. And the way we're making maps available is going to be via the website, and so basically whatever we develop, and also you've probably seen that there's some handouts already on the website. We will just push it out through the website, and then hopefully, the newspaper will pick it up and so forth. So we'll try to distribute it that way. This is a really fast-moving process, so that is the fastest way to disseminate information. On June 21, we're going to present officially the draft districting plan to the City Council, so that's basically what we all came up with. And we'll show it to the City Council, we'll tell them how this came together, we'll tell them, these are the communities that are in every district here, and this is the logic that went into it, and basically just bring them up to speed with what happened at these meetings, and then we'll see what kind of input they have. So we'll get some more input from the City Council, and they may make some adjustments based on, again, public input that they get at that meeting, and so forth. So that is pretty much the first part of this process. You want to go? When and where are the meetings? These are, as I just mentioned, on the following dates: 13th, 16th, 20th, 23rd, and 30th are the community meetings. They are all over the city because we wanted to make sure that people would have access and, that it wouldn't be too difficult to get there. They are either on Saturdays or in the evenings because we wanted to make sure that if people are working during the day, they can come in the evenings, or if you can't come in the evenings, at least perhaps you can come on to a weekend meeting. The City Council hearings are in City Hall on the 17th and the 21st of June. Then on July 25th, there is going to be a first hearing of the ordinance. So that's basically the districts that we all came up with that the City Council perhaps made some changes to or not. If we're really perfect with this process, then perhaps they won't need this they won't see the need to make any changes. And then on August 1st, this process is basically going to wrap up. So you see, it's very fast. Next, please. So what are the mapping criteria? Mapping criteria, we have 5 of them, and there are equal population, and that is something you always have to keep in mind. We're really doing this to equalize the populations in these different districts, but while you're doing that, you also have to keep all kinds of other criteria in mind. Most importantly, you have to comply with the Voting Rights Act, and that is the Federal Voting Rights Act. Then you have contiguity, compactness, respect for communities of interest, and I'll go through all of these in detail. And then finally, we are to disregard incumbents, candidates, and political parties. So let's go through really quickly equal population. Equal population, Constitution, Federal Voting Rights Act. These are, sometimes we call them the Tier 1 criteria. Those are the ones where you just we can't mess around with these. This is what we really have to do, otherwise you're really in trouble. So we have to figure out how to get reasonably equal population into each of the districts. This is pretty much you've all heard this, the one person, one vote principle comes from the 14th Amendment, which is also called the Equal Protection Clause. And what it also does, it prohibits intentional discrimination because it's a violation of equal protection. If the jurisdiction is treating residents differently because of race, because they're not according them equal protection under the law. 15th Amendment also to the Constitution bans racial discrimination in voting. So we're already talking about voting rights here a little bit. Next, please. So what's the ideal population for the district? This is rule of thumb. Every time anywhere you talk about districting or redistricting, you take your jurisdiction. So like for the state of California, that's your jurisdiction, right? You get your total population, which you get from the census. So the census every 10 years counts everybody they can find in the state of California and actually nationwide. And then they give us the results. So once they give us the results, it basically triggers redistricting. In this case, we take the results of whoever was counted in the city of Oceanside, and that is our total population. Then you look at how many districts do you need to draw. In this case, we're drawing 4. So you take your total population, you divide it by 4, and there is what you're shooting for when you are drawing your districts. So every district should have roughly 41,835 people in it. So then we're wondering, well, equal population, how equal is equal really? You know, do we have a little bit of leeway? Can we fudge around a little bit? Or do we really have to be super accurate? Well, when you're drawing congressional districts, you have to be really accurate. They can only be off by like 1 or 2 people. But when you're drawing city council districts or board of supervisor districts or, you know, districts on that level roughly, you have a little bit more leeway. And we know from the Department of Justice that plus minus 5% is usually on districts of this size okay. So what we have is we're looking at ideal population, so what we want to get in each district, which is 41,835 plus minus roughly 2,092 people. And that is actually really helpful. I was talking to somebody here earlier who was talking about equal population as a constraint. And that is exactly the right way to think about it. Because when you have to have really equal population, it's really hard sometimes to meet all the other criteria perfectly. Because you're just thinking, oh my goodness, I can only add 2 more people to this almost perfect district, right? And because otherwise I'm going to get in trouble. So having that little bit of leeway can really go a long way. Now, having said that, you don't have to go to 5%. You know, if you go a little bit less, that is probably better, but plus minus 5% is okay. Really quickly going through the Federal Voting Rights Act, because that is our second criterion, and again, that's part of like the first tier of criteria. I'll just read this off really quickly. It prohibits the denial or abridgment of voting rights on the basis of race or language minority status. And it's kind of interesting because, you know, how do we think about race? What is race? Well, for the census and for voting rights, actually, Asians, Native Americans, Alaskan Native, and Spanish heritage is actually considered a language minority group under voting rights and also in the census. And Latino, non-Latino is actually considered an ethnicity in the census. So this is how we're looking at these particular groups, and it does not apply to other language groups. The last talk I gave, I talked about not for French people, Norwegians are not covered by this. So basically your language groups are Asian, Native American, Alaskan Native, or Spanish heritage. Also, the Voting Rights Act, one more time, backwards please, thank you. It prohibits practices that have the purpose or effect of discriminating on the basis of race or language minority status, and this is not something that is very particular to this city or the county or anything. It applies everywhere in the United States. So it doesn't matter what jurisdiction you're in, what part of the United States you're in, this is a federal law and it applies. Vote dilution. So electoral systems, and it's going to get more fun. I just want to make sure you guys have heard this, okay? So electoral systems can limit the ability to elect a candidate of choice by a protected class of voters in various ways. So a protected class are the people that we just talked about. So basically race and language minority status. And for example, in an at-large election system, an at-large election system can make it impossible for a large minority group to elect a candidate of choice because the majority votes against them. pretty clear. So you have let's just say you have a majority of, 70% or 75%, and you have a small minority group that's maybe 25%. If you have just one ballot, and basically the majority is just voting the same, then the little minority may not have an opportunity to actually elect somebody, and that's basically all that is saying. And in single-member districts, they can be drawn in ways that minimize the voter's ability to elect a candidate of choice. And that is when you're taking a minority community that you know is there and you slice and dice them into many different little pieces in your districts. Then even though you have districts, you still don't have districts in which somebody can elect somebody who may represent them. Systems that limit the ability to elect in this way are said to dilute minority voting strength. Okay. Section 2 is the section under the Federal Voting Rights Act that we have to keep in mind when we're drawing district plans. And it is basically about vote dilution again, and it says that you can dilute minority voting strength through two main ways. One is cracking, which is what I just explained. So you have a minority group that is concentrated, and then you slice and dice that minority group into different districts. That's called cracking. And packing. And packing is when you put everybody, when you have like a larger minority group that could potentially get 2 seats in which they can influence an election, and you pack them all into 1 seat. So basically you have like 99% minority members in there. And that basically is also vote dilution, because then you're, limiting their ability to maybe elect another candidate. So these two terms, you hear them a lot, and you're going to hear them more as we get toward, 2021, because that's when the real redistricting for the state of California and everywhere is going to start. And people misuse these terms all the time. They talk about political parties, cracking and packing and whatnot, but these terms really they refer to the Voting Rights Act. So, having said that, we just talked a lot about race and redistricting and all of that, and minority groups and representation, but then the Supreme Court says, well, race, however, cannot be a predominant criterion in redistricting. So you're going, okay, well, all right, so you told me I had to do this one thing where I had to really pay attention to race and language minority groups, and then you're telling me I can't really pay too much attention to them, so how do you do that? And that is essentially the crux of any districting or redistricting. You have to weigh everything. You have to just do what is lawful. You have to meet the law, but you also cannot go overboard with things. So how are we careful? How do we not get in trouble? Well, the court says we need to look at traditional districting principles. So we have to also look at those. We can't just say, okay, well, let's just throw, all of our racial data onto a map and just start drawing maps by race. Doesn't work. What you do is you look at traditional districting principles, and those are compactness, contiguity, and communities of interest. And you'll remember they were on our list of criteria that we have to take into consideration anyway. Fantastic. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, next, please. So, moving on, compactness, what is that? It's a geographic principle. So it looks at the geography of the district. When you're looking at a district, it's supposed to be compact. That means it's not supposed to look at an octopus, basically, right? If it looks like an octopus, you have some explaining to do, essentially. There are many different ways to measure it. The Supreme Court has said that it basically is assumed to guard against all types of gerrymandering. So here's that term that we've all heard about. What is that? Gerrymandering, people usually think of is a funny looking district. That's a gerrymander, right? And something is probably wrong with it. And the courts agree. They're like, yeah, if it looks funny, something may be amiss there. So we're going to take another look. So it's always better if you have a district that looks a little bit better, because if it doesn't look all that great, you have some explaining to do, and you better explain it with your redistricting criteria and not based on something that you weren't supposed to do. Contiguity, what is that? That's pretty straightforward. So basically, a contiguous district is one in which all the parts are connected. So as long as you can get in your district from one end to the other, and you're not leaving the district while you're there, it's contiguous. So you can't have like half of your district in the south and the other half in your north, and you have all your other districts in the middle, and they're not connected. It's not happening. It gets interesting when you're looking at like state districts like the Bay Area, where perhaps you have part of a Senate district in San Francisco and part of it up in Marin, and then what's connecting it is the Golden Gate Bridge. And then you go, okay, well, is that a contiguous district or not, you know? And it actually is, but anyway, it gets pretty interesting. So, communities of interest. That is really what we need your help with. Council districts shall respect communities of interest as much as practicable. Communities of interest generally refers to a contiguous population which shares common social and economic interests. Sounds good, but there's no data sets. I mean, we get a lot of data from the census, but the census doesn't tell us where your neighborhoods are, where you organize, where you're working with your community members, where there is activism around businesses or schools or, you know, environmental causes or whatnot. We don't know. And that's really why we're getting together here, because we would like you to tell us what's important. So, who defines a community of interest? You all do. Because we certainly are not going to do it, because we live in Oakland. You guys live here. This is your community, so tell us about it, please. Okay. It's defined by those familiar with the community. The law does not limit the kinds of interests that may bind a community. So, you know, if it's your, you know, environmental activism in some, you know, in some coastal communities, that is a really, really big deal. Or, you know, you are more interested in historic preservation, and it may be different from one end of the city to the other. That is all okay. So please just tell us about it. There is no wrong answers here. It's up to those who live or work with communities to identify and establish the interests, and you also don't have to just talk about what's going on right now. If you're basically working on, say, development, like your community has been working on getting, say, a park done, or a golf course, or, you know, some sort of a coastal development, a university campus, and everybody's been working on this for years and years and years. That is something you should tell us about. It doesn't have to be, oh, it's already here, this is the golf course we're all interested in. No, we're working on a golf course. That's also okay. Next, please. Economic interests, just to give you some ideas so that you know, you can start thinking about this. Economic interests for current situation would be maybe common employment or economic opportunities, or maybe you have a lack of economic opportunities in a particular area. And goals could be to expand those opportunities, maybe development, as I said, bringing in businesses and jobs. Social interests, oftentimes people talk about schools, they talk about shared culture, shared language, shared history. Transportation sometimes comes in. I mean, I remember my community really organized against a transportation hub. They wanted to put a big bus depot into my neighborhood, and we really didn't want it. So that was a huge, you know, way that we organized, and we definitely wanted to stay together as a community of interest when it came to redistricting. And then parks. And as goals, you could maybe organize around improving recreational opportunities or public safety, preserving historic resources, as I mentioned already. So, how do you document a community of interest? So how do you get the information to us in the best way? If you could answer the following questions, and you probably saw this in your handouts, because we keep on repeating those questions. Here, like on the speaker card, there's already a way to fill this out, and then there's also another handout. There's one handout that explains communities of interest, and one that says, please answer these questions for us. So if you could tell us, like, what defines your community of interest? What's your mission? What's your commonality? And sometimes it's good to think about what's different outside of your community, because that sometimes helps you just to figure out where the boundaries are. I know for my community, it was very, very clear that at some point there was like a really big street, and as soon as you crossed the street, everything changed. So we knew that that was our boundary. Where is your community located in the city? This is something that especially Jamie's going to be very interested in, because she's going to be trying to draw these communities, these boundaries, just like puzzle pieces, so that once we have these communities and we know what's going on, we can use these and put the districts together that way, while also meeting the other criteria. What you can do is you can get a map to us. If you like using Google, or if you have internet access and you like drawing around, we have a handout on the website that says how to draw your community of interest using Google Maps. So it's a free program, and it's step-by-step, and it works. We just tested it one more time. Google has not changed their interface since last week. Tested it yesterday. And so if you want to do that, just use Google and then just email it to us or print it out and bring it to us. You can just write it down. You can just say, you know, the streets that are the borders, that form the borders for our community, they're all around this particular shopping center, and here's the name of the streets. So as long as we know where it is, then we can keep it together. Sometimes, which is also interesting, sometimes you can actually run into a situation where somebody says, our community of interest is really big, and we actually don't want to stay together. We want 2 or 3 city council members, so we want to know that too. Still, where is your community of interest, and what do you want to have done with it? Let us know that. If we don't know it, we can't help you with it, you know? So, yeah. Finally, ignore politics. Disregard the location of incumbents and candidates, as well as the interests of political parties. Please, if you know where your city council members live, please don't tell us. If you know there is a candidate who wants to run for office, we don't want to know where he or she lives. Please don't tell us. And interests of political parties, we don't want to hear about that either. We all know that people know, but we just don't want to know about it in this particular hearing, so let's just keep politics out of here, because that's what we're supposed to do. Okay, do we have another? Yeah, we have another slide, right? There. So why should you participate? I think you're here, so you probably know this already, but if you need some talking points to perhaps get your neighbors interested in this process, of course, to make sure that we know about your community of interest. This process can give your community a voice and make sure it has equal access to the political process. It can encourage citizens to register and vote and remain politically engaged. We actually see this coming out of these meetings very frequently, that people really get into this and say, yeah, this is not so bad, to maybe get involved with the community a little bit more. And to help shape a districting plan that provides communities a meaningful opportunity to elect candidates who represent their interests on issues that are important to their lives. So finally, how to get involved? How do you learn more? Testify, submit written testimony, please send us supporting information, information about your community of interest or other topics that we need to know about. Please, can you send that to us as soon as possible? As you know, we're going to try to have pretty much a draft on the 30th, so the last day of the month, or almost the last day of the month. We want to have a draft, so we really need everybody to get engaged like now. Next couple of weeks are really important. Even today. Give us your community of interest. If you then talk to your neighbors, and your neighbors say, you're a couple of blocks off, just come back and just tell us, okay, you need to just adjust the boundaries a little bit of our community. But give us information as soon as you can, please. Submit information here at a hearing by mail, drop it off at the city clerk's office. We have an email. It's districtelections@ci.oceanside.ca.us. I know it's a really long email address, but if you just go on the website for the city of Oceanside, the first item is districting. Click on that, and all the info is on there. The handouts are on there. There's going to be a map on there. There's all kinds of stuff on there, and we're going to keep on pushing things onto the website as soon as we have them. And that is the very long web address that we have, but again, it's a lot easier just to go to City of Oceanside and then just click on the districting link, and that'll get you there. So, thank you very much for participating. I'm going to stop talking now, and finally, and what we would like to do is take about a 15-minute break. And during that break, we'd like you to take a look at the maps, talk to Jamie, Alexis, and myself, and to Jesus, and to, oh yeah, and we have cookies and water over there. I am just notified, no hamburgers. Somebody asked for hamburgers. I'm sorry, it's cookies today. Maybe next time, come to the next meeting, find out whether there will be hamburgers. Probably not, but anyway, cookies and water for sure. So please just, talk to your community members, grab a form, fill it out, and then after 15 or so minutes, we'll get together, and then we have a microphone, and if you could go on the record and just kind of tell us a little bit about your communities. Jamie will try, we're going to put a map up, so while you're talking, Jamie will try to find your community on the map really quickly. I think we have a pointer also. We'll zoom in. You can explain to us what's going on in the community, and that way we can keep track of, the various areas that should stay together or not stay together or whatnot, and we're pretty much going to do the same thing at all of the community meetings, except that starting at meeting 3, we'll also then, after we get the input, start to put some districts together, okay? So, 15 minutes, sound good? Okay, thank you.
That was great, thank you.
On a Saturday, and for your patience as we're getting this meeting together. So just feel free to grab a seat. Sorry, I'll speak up a little louder. So feel free to grab a seat, and then we'll get situated, and we'll begin with the public portion momentarily. I have the people who turn in their forms. I will bring you a microphone, and I also have a laser pointer, so you can point up at the screen where your community of interest is. So momentarily, I'm just going to hand it over to Karin, and then we'll begin. So just 1 second. Go for it. Do you want me to start asking people to come up? Okay, perfect. So each one, you'll have about 3 minutes to address, and feel free to ask any questions during that time, but really just make any statements. So our first speaker is going to be Scott Ashton. So.
Don't know.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Ashton. I'm an Oceanside resident and also the CEO of the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce. Our community of interest is our Oceanside business community. So unlike maybe some of the other communities of interest, we're not necessarily trying to keep our community together, but more importantly, we want to make sure that our business community is as evenly as possible spread out amongst the 4 districts. We want to make sure that each of our council members has an incentive to hear the voice of our business community, the people that are providing jobs for our local residents. So we do understand that there are some mandatory constraints as far as population and other constraints, but our goal is to make sure that our business community is evenly represented throughout the new districts. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. All right, our next speaker is Richard Fox.
I'm good. Hi, my name's Richard Fox. I'm a lifetime resident of South Oceanside. South Oceanside was left out of the meetings, but I'll just have to tell everybody to find one of these meetings. I want to say that South Oceanside is kind of a unique area of the city, and we want to keep it really beachy. And just looking at ways to draw districts, I was thinking, if they go east and west, we could have representation all the way up and down the coast of maybe 3 or 4 different council people, instead of having the coast all represented by one council person. So just out of curiosity, I just thought real quick, what if we did like South, or Oceanside Boulevard South, all the way east and west?
Do you want to point?
Whatever. How's a point? I'm gonna lose my time. So right here, is that Oceanside Boulevard? See, I don't even know where I'm at. This way, Oceanside Boulevard out. So all the way from the ocean all the way east, including the lake down here. And out of curiosity, I went up when we mapped it out, and that area would be within 3.8%. So we're trying to be within 5%. So that could be one district right there. And then you could maybe go up to like Mesa Drive area. You could maybe go to, then you could maybe have one Highway 76 north, all the way east and west. So then we have like, they'd have like the Harbor Beach area, and so there'd be different representation. Now, all the east-west corridors are already set, but we are looking at changing maybe some of the north-south corridors, and if you made the districts say north-south, then you might only have one person representing that corridor to make those decisions or represent those people, whereas if you go east-west, you would divide that corridor again and maybe have 2, 3, 4 different council people representing that corridor. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? Am I not making sense, or just doesn't make sense? I'm being clear? Okay, am I being clear? So what I'm saying is just mostly like the coastal area and Coast Highway and things like that. If you do it just north-south, you only have one person representing that whole area. South Oceanside really wants to remain beachy, really wants to be different than downtown area, and I think if we have representation all the way up through the coast, then South O, which I'm the biggest fan of, would be left out and turned into downtown.
All right, our next speaker is Maria Russell.
Oh, what's this here? Oh, well, okay, if I need to, okay. Hi, my name is Maria Russell. I've lived in this community for about 16 years, and the border that I see is McNeil, Bush, Holly, Loretta. We're a predominantly Latino community with a large migrant population. I kind of feel like we're a stepchild. You know, we have a lot of issues. We have infrastructure issues, we have code issues, we have at-risk youth that we need more resources for them. So if we can have, I love this idea of one person, accountability, short terms. If they don't do their job, bye-bye. And then you get somebody else. So I guess that's my spiel. So,
Our next speaker is Clint Russell.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm definitely all for the districting, kind of reiterating a bit of what my wife said. I feel that if you have one go-to person with your needs in that particular district, with the consensus from, all the people that live there, things can get done a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently. If you by splitting up the city in districts, everybody has an opportunity to share in with the funding and to get their equal share. Okay, so the money doesn't just get diverted to where all the money already is. Okay, and that's pretty much the bottom line here. We need to split this up equally so everybody has a voice. Everybody has an opportunity to voice their opinion, their grievances, what have you. And going back to what my wife said, this neighborhood has been needing help for years. Infrastructure-wise. Sure. How do you, is it on? Okay, so basically, I think the district would probably be bigger, but our immediate area is the east side, which is up Mission Avenue, up to Canyon, to 76, and then Loretta, and up in here. okay? And for years, I mean, our street right here, we live up against McNeil right here, okay? And we have a half a street there. It's been that way for 16 years, okay? And it's very dangerous. Not to mention, our entire neighborhood is in desperate need of infrastructure repair. Not to say we need to get all new roads and everything brand new. We just want to bring it up to code so we have a safe neighborhood for our children to play in. There's a lot of issues in our neighborhood that need help. I mentioned this before in other meetings. We don't have any community policing, okay? We have one person that's our community officer in our neighborhood, and they do quite a bit, and they do the best they can. But I never see police getting out of their cars, going through neighborhoods, talking to people, trying to communicate with the neighbors, and really make a difference in the neighborhood. Most of the people here are pretty intimidated by the police. So we're not going to make this a better city if we don't really engage everybody. And everybody needs a voice. And I really believe this idea is great. For all the other communities too, it should be kind of split up in a way where the demographics aren't all one demographic. It should be a variety of people, so everybody gets an opportunity to share their input. Anyway, I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Our next speaker is William Loftus. Oh, okay, all right, sorry, okay. Jimmy Knott.
Okay. South Open, down towards this area, keep going. And to see there, or
Mr. Knott, would you like to speak at the microphone since you got your hands full? It might be easier. You can raise that
Okay, right about here is where I live, right on the hinterlands of South O. And that's down along with Loma Alta Creek, going up here, down La Salina Mobile Village. I've been in Oceanside. My first memories now back in when I was 4 years old. I'm 62 now, so it gives you an idea. But I have a few things to first say. First off, why are we just limiting it to 4 council districts? You know, let's stop and do this right. You know, why don't we take some natural divisions and look at it? Oceanside has a natural division of 7 townships. A natural division of 7 townships. Look at our public services. Police, fire, water service, sewer. Look at it. It has a division, a natural division. Why aren't we following that? And they have the actual numbers of service to the actual numbers of people. It's not. We're taking and looking at it only there. And someone brought up to me, well, okay, is it part of the charter or part of the city? Charters can be changed. We can do it. The council can also do it if they want to. They can put it onto the council agenda. They can do it. It's part of it. I read the charter. The next thing is, California has a population, and also does Oceanside, that is changing, dramatically changing. In the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to have a common plurality of populations. There's not going to be a majority population anymore. Just everybody, all the, quote, racial minorities, we're all going to be equal in 20 to 30 years. What's going to take place? It's like Sandag says. You know, we got to look at things a little bit differently in our services. We need to look forward in our division of our districts in that mindset. We aren't. And also, I have to agree with Richard. Whoever set these meetings up did not take in consideration also other areas that need to be considered for our local townships. There's 5 meetings. As I pointed out, there's naturally 7 townships. South O was neglected. You look at the ag area, look at there. You also have other areas in the city that were neglected. Why can't they be given this opportunity? I know in this room, there are people here that represent various communities. I recognize you. And you represent about 10,000 people together in this room. So I respect each and every one of you. So I just want people to start stopping and thinking. And let's look at different ways of doing things instead of the common old way of doing. Let's do it right. Take time and do it right. It doesn't have to be in 1 month. You know, if we take a year, so what? Let's stop and do it right. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cindy Rocco. Do you want me to speak to her?
Yeah, Councilmember Sanchez asked that I address the issue of timing in response to the last speaker, and there is an issue of timing because we are working under a statutory process laid out in the Elections Code, and so if we are to avoid the prospect of litigation as well as the costs and the potential for having to pay attorney's fees in that litigation, then this entire process has to be wrapped up within 90 days of the date that the City Council adopted a resolution of intent to begin the change to council districts. So we adopted that resolution on May 3rd, and that means this process needs to be wrapped up if we are to meet the 90-day deadline by August 1st. And so that's the timetable that we're working under.
And in addition to that, as far as the meeting locations, that was my office. We set up all the meetings, and the reason why we couldn't locate one in South Oceanside specifically was the turnaround time that we had to locate 5 locations within a broad representation of the city. So we were able to get the 5 locations that we were able to, but we'll always want to try and improve and do a better job. At this time, Cindy Rocco.
Thank you. I was doing a little reading on the gerrymandering. Oh, okay. And I was reading something where you take the shortest lines and distances as far as, versus what I think Richard was saying, or someone was saying, where you take 4 straight lines from the coast all the way to the east. So my proposal would be more of a squared area, and using things like where mobile home parks are, environmental issues, where city assets are, where certain city plans are going to be. Also, we could take into consideration schools, school districts, certain things that common bonds for every population. So, my concept would be, for example, taking, obviously from the lagoon in the 78, going up to El Camino Real, going over to where the coast is actually split in 2. Oh, I'm not sure. I don't know if I could do both. Huh? I'm sorry. I don't know how to do this.
Just hold it down.
Okay.
You hold down the button when you're
okay.
in the point.
And that's the 76 there?
So
Okay.
you hold down the button.
All right, so let's just say we take this line and then we divide this line. So over here, the coast would be split into...
Can you step up?
Oh, sorry. So if you took the square and you divided the coast in 2, you would take this line and go up to here approximately. And then if you took from here to here, you're drawing 4 4 squares. But within each of these areas, like the Coast Highway Vision Plan is in here, so that's a shared major plan. And also there is the agritourism up here. There's going to be the possible Rancho del Oro interchange and Melrose, whatever it's called, I forget right now. So that's going to be a major concern there. Also, something that's coming up particular within our neighborhood is we backburnered the Oceanside Boulevard Vision Plan, but it's becoming more and more of a shared issue for, let's say, Fire Mountain, and also across that way where Goat Hill is, etc. So that's like the forgotten stepchild plan, but it's completely important to these communities from what my understanding is. Also, if we were to look at seniors, there's also a trail. I don't know if there's any parks in here, but there's a park here, there's seniors here, and then there's seniors up in this area. So, hang on one second. Also, for the business quadrant, we have a huge let's say we go from El Camino Real as our dividing point, so Rancho del Oro is above that. Then you have a concentration of businesses here downtown, and then you have the businesses over here. You're going to have Walmart. I'm not really too sure. I'd have to look at all the businesses in here. And then up here, you're going to have the other Walmart, et cetera, et cetera. So, and over here where the Rancho del Oro is, I know the business park and everything is there, and the Sprinter line. So hang on a second. Also, major assets are, I don't know, you can't really divide this, but the coast is a major asset, and there's the pier and the harbor. So we have that, but we also have, I guess we have the environmental with the lagoon and et cetera over here, agritourism here, and I apologize, I really don't know about here. And just one more thing, I'll try to wrap this up. Hang on. So if I were to say what was the most, and also underserved communities, you'd also have, with this division here of, let's say, El Camino Real, you would have East Side, and this general area is underserved, and I think like Libby Lake in the back gate is underserved. And if East Side is the stepchild, or, you know, really underserved, and then downtown is just, you know, the golden child, then you would have some sharing if there was an issue of resources or allocation for infrastructure. So those are my points. But a lot of it has to do with where the plans are. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ken Dahl.
Hi, my name is Ken Delpe. I'm a 4-year resident of Oceanside, California. I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody here who's staffing this event. It's really new to me, coming from other communities where this kind of outreach just never happened, so I appreciate everything you're doing right now. I live up near Lake Guajume, and that is a very rural part of Oceanside. And I'm here to say that while I support having districts, I would like to make a pitch that the more rural areas of Oceanside be kept together, because that is a small populated community, and by that very nature, it requires a representative who encompasses all of the rural area and the population therein. So that's my pitch for the rural part of Oceanside. Thank you for the opportunity. I was going to keep it.
Our next speaker is Juan Juarez.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Juan Juarez. I'm Oceanside resident. I grew up in the Center Street area, Crown Heights. Also a veteran. I served the United States of America here proudly. So my community of interest is Latino community. For me, it's important representation in the city council members, gender and culture as well. Some of the proposals that right now I'm looking at is just based on communities, specifically in Latino communities. It's Oceanside Boulevard North. So I don't know if you want to get that. So anything, if you guys know where Oceanside Boulevard is at, anything north of that, and anything west of El Camino Real. And that would cover the Pozole area, Mesa, Crown Heights, and the Capistrano area, which is just kind of over here. So that would be one. The next one would be Oceanside Boulevard, anything south of Oceanside Boulevard, and it would cover South Oak community, and it would also cover the Tri-City area community. Right now, like I'm just speaking, just on communities. I don't know the numbers, but it's just something that I'm just throwing out there right now. The second district would be anything east of Douglas and anything 76 and north of it, and that would cover Los Arbolitos area, the Libby Lake area, and also kind of like the Back Gate area. The fourth district would be 76 South, anything south of the 76, and anything north of Oceanside Boulevard. And that would cover the Martin Luther King area, Rancho de Lauro area. And that's it.
Our next speaker is Arlene Hammerschmidt.
I can't do two technical things at one time, I know that. Are there other residents from Fire Mountain here? Thank you. I'm the only resident from Fire Mountain. And how about South Oceanside? That's it? Hi. Pardon? Okay, so Luis? Juan, sorry. What Juan said is kind of what I was picturing too. Kind of by density, just averaging out the density colors of it on that map, and kind of what Cynthia said too. As far as Fire Mountain goes, we have some interests that are similar with South Oceanside, and the area from, excuse me, from El Camino Real east. There's a lot of culture around the schools that are similar and shared. South Oceanside is a long time standing community. Fire Mountain kind of grew out of South Oceanside, so there's a lot of overlapping and connecting, and schools and culture and relationships and business dealings, as well as transportation within that area. What else? Income isn't too far of a stretch. I have no idea what the ethnic demographics of that is, except it's pretty light. It's semi-rural. I'm glad the person brought something up about the rural areas, because when the density of a rural area is so small, it gets overlooked by the larger population. So that's another cultural that we should really add to our criteria for our city. And I'm a farm kid, so I kind of get that stuff. as far as topography goes too, for that whole area, kind of south of Oceanside Boulevard, north of the Lagoon and 78, and including that area that looks like it used to belong to Carlsbad. Is that the lake area? Yes, Lake Avenue, Lake Boulevard, the cut through to Vista. That's kind of like similar to me. And I'm only one person from Fire Mountain, so I certainly hope there are more people that come and make input. Fire Mountain, South Oceanside, and the areas south of Oceanside Boulevard also share shopping areas and business areas and communicating to and from them. So that's my case for making that area kind of stick together. And I really like what you said, and 4. Put it in 4. Go by population and see what other similarities are in those areas, and I'll bet you we'll find a lot. All right, thank you.
Our next speaker is Jeanette.
My areas of interest is the back gate of Camp Pendleton from Mission all the way over to the border of Camp Pendleton from, I guess you would say, Harbor all the way to Bonsall. I do think that should stay one area simply because families go to school there, our kids go to school there, there's plenty of development, it's just not enough resources. There are businesses coming into the area and homes are being built which will account for the number of population that need to be met. And as a mother and a business owner in the area, I do think it would be for the best benefit for the community to work together and keeping that area together. Thank you.
Push this, you hold that button down.
So this is Canyon. In my opinion, keeping the harbor area, so you can say straight up to 76 from the harbor all the way down to Bonneville, that complete area, including the drive-in, including over where the shooting range is, all the way up Mission to you run into Vista, should be the same area in one as far as the districting, because all the schools are together. Everything that's over there is related together for the area. So to be dividing the area would be detrimental for the community because things would have to be outsourced and funding would be diverted to other areas. And that is a high need area because there is a lot of low income, there's a lot of military families that do live in the area that do not have access to the appropriate resources because they do not know about them. So if there's a voting process or whatever we have to do, everyone please keep this specific area together.
Wonderful. Our next speaker is Linda Walshaw.
Oh, I can't even see the map. Sorry. I don't know that I can do anything with the map, but I'm going to give this a shot. I don't think I need this. Good evening, or afternoon, sorry. Linda Walshaw. I am an Oceanside Housing Commissioner, and I am the chair of the Oceanside Mobile Home Advisory Committee, representing the parks. There are a lot of parks, and not all of them are located together. Although we share common interests, and many of them are senior parks, we also have low-income families. There is a cluster of parks at El Camino Real between Douglas and Mission Avenue, but there's also parks on North River Road. There are parks along Coast Highway, including the RV parks, which are also impacted, and they will be affected by the strategic overlay plan, some of them. So there's a lot of very different issues that will impact the parks in a different way. So although they share some common interests, they're not all located all in in one place. So I can see why there would be a need to cluster certain things together, but where the ones are in the valley at El Camino and Douglas and Mission right there, we also have a very large senior population here in Oceanside, and just up El Camino is Oceana, which includes, I believe, 8 different communities, and just the one Oceana, Maine has 942 homes, I think. So the senior issues are another thing, and I was thinking about the demographics involved in that, because I think something like 51% of our population are over the age of 50. I know it's less for over 65, but our baby boomers are aging, and more of us are turning 50 and retiring every day. And we see that affected and reflected in the numbers of affordable housing for seniors especially, and our veterans and our disabled and our blind people. And so as far as splitting this up in demographics, I think we also need to look at how are we going to divide our districts up in a way that our senior population is represented in all the different areas that they live in the city, because we also have Costa Serena and other senior communities, and we have senior apartments along the coast, we have senior apartments at Lake Boulevard, we have another park at Lake Boulevard. So there are other factors to consider rather than just saying, oh, everybody in a mobile home park should be together. I think we need to look at the ages and the needs of our senior communities and factor that into what we're doing so that our demographics are spread evenly and our resources are spread evenly throughout the city. That's just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gerald Hampton. I reside in the Rancho del Oro area. You might remember that. That was the infamous streetlight fiasco. So I guess that would kind of be my common area of interest. But listening and hearing some of the plans and the proposals that have been presented, it seems like no matter what, whether it's east-west or the 4 blocks, we will still have a great representation. But personally, I do like the 4-block quadrant plan that was proposed. But one of the things I did want to convey as well, because if you're like me, I didn't really know what to expect today coming here. I thought there'd be a presentation. I didn't know that we would have the homework exercise here of actually having to break all this down. And so I would just encourage each and every one of you, because I'm going to do this, I'm going to go back to the community and I'm going to be talking to my neighbors. We've got more meetings coming up. This is important. And I think now that this kind of kickoff has been taken on, we have a better idea as to what to expect at the next meetings, because I assume it will be a similar circumstance. So I would just encourage you to talk to your neighbors, get them involved. There will be other meetings, come back out, and hopefully we'll have better ideas and a little bit more firm action as to how we want to make this happen.
Is there anyone else? We just went through all the speaker slips that were turned in. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak on this item who hasn't turned in a slip, you're more than welcome to come up and speak. Arlene, did you have a question? Sure.
While we were standing over there talking, he and I were saying, remember the old World Books encyclopedias of the physiology of the human body? Had this system, this system, this system, this system, and when you put it all together, we're skin. You guys are too young for that. But that kind of an overlay over our map would really, I think we could just look at the colors and say, all right, there it is, there it is. You know, here's the Chamber of Commerce, what they want. Here's the population, like that. And whatever the other criteria are, put it pictorially in layers, put it all on top of each other and say, ooh, I mean, it might be obvious. I think a lot of people have expressed what I'm talking about already, just in different ways.
Yeah, that sounds great. And actually, that's portion we're going to have on the city's website in a couple of weeks is actually an interactive map where you can start seeing the input that's been provided by the public and the expertise from Karin and kind of seeing some options that come up, and the city council will vote on that. But that's a great idea. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item, or anyone else who'd like to address any issues? Oh, yes.
I don't really completely understand the issue and everything involved, but one of my concerns would be, it seems like there are certain areas where there's probably more income, and it would be important, I think, for that to be considered when they're dividing these districts up. Like, I'm sure downtown probably generates more income than inland somewhere, and it would be awful to have one representative having all the power because they are in a district that has a higher income. I mean, I don't know how you would parcel that out, but it is a concern.
That's very good. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. And if you state your name.
Hello, everyone. My name is Davina Hernandez. I had a question. I'm not sure. I came in late, but I had a question about the Fusat area near the outdoor swamp meet, the area that's up on the hill. Was that talked about? But that's the back gate, correct?
Well, from the harbor on down in the 76, it includes the area where the drive-in is, where the homes at, and there's something on the back side.
So I live in the Fusat area over here by the outdoor swamp meet. Wow, you cannot see that. So it's a big area down there. That's where I live, but I also that's where I live. And there's a big population there, and there's one park, and that place is also dense, so I just wanted to make sure that that was spoken about, but I also work in the Crown Heights area. So I definitely agree with my peer here, Juan, that although there is a large Latino population in our city, we all have different things that we would like to address in whether it's Latino or regardless of ethnicity or race, we all have our different issues, but I really hope that we can all come together to sit and actually talk about how we can work together, because at the end of the day, we're one city of Oceanside.
Thank you so much. Any other speakers or anyone else who'd like to voice their opinion or any issues regarding this item? All right, I see none at this time. Karin, I'll just turn it back over to you. Thank you again for providing your input, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Is this working? Thank you very much for coming out. If you have not filled out a speaker card and you did just provide some input, if you would please just fill out the item that says, where's your community and those 3 questions, that would be really helpful. And please make sure that you write clearly so we can actually read it when we're digitizing everything. If you didn't want to speak and you have some input, if you would please just fill out one of those forms and then just get them to us however you want to, drop them off at City Hall or leave one here. We're going to be here for a little while longer. Feel free to talk to us if you have any questions. And otherwise, I am hoping to see all of you and all your neighbors and your friends and everybody else who might want to come out on Tuesday, hopefully.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, real quick, just so Tuesday, it's at 6 p.m., our next meeting at the El Corazon Senior Center. And then our next meeting is next Saturday out at Melba Bishop Park, and then the following Tuesday at Lake Elementary, then the following Tuesday at the Library Community Room. So please come to any of those meetings and let us know if you have any questions. And there's a council meeting this next Wednesday as well.